All right, Algebra AB. This is Scottie Pippen, clearly, and I'm going to show you a couple problems on backtracking and basic moves. So we're going to do two problems. You can go ahead and write them both down now. We're going to do two problems, but we're going to do it in two different ways for both problems. So first one, backtracking, you're a little more familiar with based on Miss Hart's lesson yesterday. Second one, basic moves, which you've done, but it just looks a little different when we're solving quadratics. Notice again that both of these problems do not have a regular x term, right? The linear term. Remember, if it has that x term or linear term, then you have to factor and solve with the zero product property, all right? Always factor and solve with the zero product property if there's a regular x term. If there's just an x squared term in numbers and coefficients, then we know we can backtrack or use basic moves. So let's do that. Number one here, I look and see what's happening to x. Well, first, x gets squared. Some teachers write that differently. I like to just write the word squared up there. Then it gets multiplied by 3. And lastly, we add 7. That brings us to 55. So now we're just going to go in reverse of those order of operations. We're going to subtract 7, puts us at 48. Divide by 3, that puts us at 16. And now for the square root, we have to remember that this introduces both a positive square root and a negative square root. Positive square root of 16 is 4. The negative square root is negative 4. So we get x equals 4 and x equals negative 4. Of course, you can always substitute those numbers back in to check your answer. With basic moves, just another option here. You can backtrack or basic moves, whatever you're most comfortable with. It's pretty similar. We're going to reverse the order of operations, but we're going to show work on both sides of the equation. So you might be more familiar solving linear equations like this, and thus might want to do it to solve these. Subtract 7. Now we divide by 3. We get that x squared equals 16. Some teachers like to show the square root over each side here. Some teachers like to put it right there. But what we have to remember is when we do that, we introduce both a positive and a negative 4. So we get negative 4 and positive 4. You can write it like that. You can write plus minus 4, however you want to do that. All right, let's do another one. This one a little bit more complicated. 2 times the quantity of x minus 5 squared minus 3 equals 95. So with backtracking, we start with what's happening to x first, and inside those parentheses, we subtract 5. Then, be careful on the order here, we square, right? We're not multiplying by 2 yet. Exponents come first. Now we multiply by 2, and lastly, subtract 3, and that brings us to 95. Reversing that, add 3 to 95, we get 98. Then we divide by 2. That brings us to 49. Now, to reverse the squaring or undo squaring, again, we do a positive square root and a negative square root. This gives us 7 and negative 7, but we still have that minus 5 step that happened. So we have to do that to both of these answers. We've got to add 5 to both of them to undo that. That gives me 12 and negative 2. So in this case, our answers are 12 and negative 2. Notice it's not just the positive and negative of one value, because after we square root, we add 5 to 2 different opposite values. So you're not just going to get like plus or minus 4 for something like this. You get 2 totally different answers. All right, with basic moves, same idea. We're going to reverse the order of operations. So I'm going to add 3 to both sides. Divide everything by 2. That gives us x minus 5 quantity squared equals 49. Square root, and remember when I square root, that's plus or minus. So I get x minus 5 equals plus or minus 7. So kind of like the zero product property here, I sort of am going to split this into 2 equations. One where x plus minus 5 equals 7. One where x minus 5 equals negative 7. Add 5 to both sides in both of these, and we get that x equals 12 and x equals negative 2. All right, hope you took some good notes on that. We're going to practice with a couple problems on your own here. Feel free to come back to this video if it helps you. Thanks.